Hi everyone, I am Neha Agrawal. I'm the founder of WiseUp Communications and an alumni of NTU Singapore. I lived in Singapore for a total of 3 years where I completed my masters and also worked professionally. In this video, I'm going to share with you the truth about what are the pros and cons of studying in Singapore. If you would have seen my past videos, you would definitely know that I'm actually a fan of Singapore. I love the country and can't get enough of it. So definitely in this video, I'm going to share with you some pros of studying in Singapore. But of course, there are some downsides as well, which you should be aware about. So without further delay, let's get started. Some of the biggest pros of studying in Singapore are: first, Singapore is home to some of the top ranked universities globally, like NUS, NTU, SMU, SUTD, and INSEAD. The infrastructure is top notch, be it classrooms, auditoriums, and research facilities. In fact, NTU has been consistently ranking as one of the most beautiful campuses in the world. The faculty is one of the best globally, students are highly qualified, research facilities are just brilliant, and the curriculum up to date with the latest technologies and trends. When you study in one of these top universities of Singapore, it will give you the necessary exposure and knowledge to reach great heights in your career. On the flip side, one of the biggest cons of studying in Singapore is that there are not too many university options to choose from. Apart from the top 5 universities that I shared with you, there are of course many other universities in Singapore, but most of them are neither reputed enough or feature in the global rankings. So if you are applying to Singapore, you will also have to apply to another country as an option. For example, when I was applying for my masters, I applied to 2 universities in Singapore, which was NUS and NTU, and then I applied to 8 other universities in the US. So I feel this is one of the biggest cons of studying in Singapore, that if you really want to study in this country, there are not too many university options to choose from. Now, another advantage of studying in Singapore is the education cost. When you look at the tuition fees and living expenses and compare it with other popular countries like the US, it is definitely cheaper. Tuition fees, I would say, is roughly 30% lesser, making it a much better option when you're going for expensive programs like an undergrad program of 4 years or an MBA program in a foreign country. Apart from this, the Singapore government also offers something which is called as the Service Obligation Scheme. This is applicable for undergrad programs and postgrad programs with research. Under this scheme, the government reduces your fees by nearly 50%, provided you work in Singapore for 3 years after you graduate. So this makes the fee even more cost effective. On the con side, the disadvantage of studying in Singapore is that there are not too many scholarship options. Apart from the service obligation scheme that I shared with you, there are few scholarship options, but number one, either they are not applicable to Indians or they are extremely difficult to get. Now, this is very different as compared to the European countries, which offer a lot of scholarship schemes which are also easy to qualify for. Of course, when we compare it to the US also doesn't offer a lot of scholarship schemes, but of course, when we compare it to European countries, this is definitely a disadvantage. Now, another great advantage of studying in Singapore is the ease of getting a visa. Once you get an admit from a Singapore university, the university takes care of the complete application process and you don't have to go through any hassle. 99% of the times you will get that visa also, unless there is of course some serious issue. This is very different from how the visa application process takes place for other countries, where you have to write long visa application letters, go for multiple rounds of visa interviews, and even after that, you have no guarantee whether you will get the visa or not, even though you have an admit from a university. So this ease with which you can get a visa in Singapore makes it very advantageous to study there. On the flip side, a lot of people plan to study abroad with the intention of settling down there as well. While it is easier to get a PR or citizenship in countries like Canada, Germany, it has become increasingly difficult to get PR or citizenship in Singapore. I have friends who've stayed in Singapore for 5 to 6 years, have been working there for nearly 4 years, and they've still not managed to get a PR in Singapore. On an employment pass also, say once you're married and you want to get your spouse to Singapore, you will need a dependent pass, for which you need to meet a minimum salary requirement, which again is very high. So if you're planning to study abroad with the intention of settling down there permanently, this can be one disadvantage of Singapore. Now, another great advantage of studying in Singapore is the presence of global organizations for job opportunities. Singapore is the Asia Pacific headquarters of many multinational companies like Google, Meta, Citibank, etc. Not only that, the startup culture in Singapore is at its peak right now, with companies like Grab, Lazada, Foodpanda hiring many young talent. So when you graduate from a university in Singapore, you have the option to not only work in a global organization, but some of the best startups. On the other hand, the con of studying in Singapore is that there aren't many job options. Singapore is a small country, so even though there are good companies, there are not a lot of companies. So what happens is that the students who are graduating from Singapore universities, they are all competing for the same jobs, making the Singapore market extremely competitive, and that's why it's very difficult to find a job in Singapore. This is unlike other bigger countries like US, UK, Germany, where even though you don't get into one of the top companies, you will still get a job somewhere. So this is one of the cons of studying in Singapore. And now, for the last and the final reason, the pro of studying in Singapore is the international exposure. One of the reasons why we wish to study abroad is so that we can get this international exposure of meeting with people from different nationalities and learning about their cultures and traditions. Singapore provides you with just that. You will meet people from China, Malaysia, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Korea, and many other Southeast Asian countries. People are friendly, accepting, and genuinely want you to be a part of their circle. When I was studying in Singapore, I had more international friends than I had Indian friends. And that truly made it one of the best experiences of studying in Singapore. On the con side, your exposure is limited to Southeast Asian culture. You wouldn't find a lot of people from US or Europe coming to Singapore to study, probably only a handful of them. So your exposure would be more about the cultures and traditions of different countries in Asia rather than a global one. Personally, I wouldn't even consider this as a con, because studying in Singapore made me love Asia. It made me realize what are our roots and where do we actually come from. I learned that the Indian cultures and traditions were so similar to other Southeast Asian countries, and that made it a beautiful experience. So guys, here is the pro and con list that I wanted to share with you about studying in Singapore so that you can make a more informed decision. Of course, if you want to learn more about how to study or work in Singapore, I've made an entire playlist and you can watch these videos. They are about my own experiences in Singapore. Now, if you have your personal doubts and you would like to clear them with me in a one-to-one session, you can book a Singapore consultation session through my website. To book your slot, the link is in the description and in the pinned comment. And now, thank you so much for watching this video and I wish you have a fantastic career ahead.